Okay, let's get started. Welcome to this video session in Google Drive. This session started as a way of showing everyone how to upload files to Google Drive and create shareable links from those files. But really, it makes much more sense to do a little bit of a deeper dive and to really kind of understand how Google Drive works and to feel comfortable navigating around it, because Google Drive really is the backbone, the foundation for all Google products. So kind of it's the point where they kind of all connect. So it's really important to have a good understanding of Google Drive. So that's what we're going to cover in this session. Of course, ultimately culminating with uploading files and creating shareable links from files in Google Drive. So what is Google Drive? I usually explain Google Drive as just a giant USB, right? This is where you store all your files. It's a giant file cabinet. It replaces your USB flash drive. The nice part about Google Drive is that, well, one, you have Google for Education accounts, so your storage space is unlimited. So there is no max size. You can upload content files to your heart's content in Google Drive. The other main benefit is that it is cloud-based, so it's not confined to any specific location. In other words, if you upload a file to your Google Drive, right, as long as you are signed into your Google account, you can access those files from any computer anywhere in the world, right? So Argentina to Zimbabwe, no matter what computer you're using or where you're located, you would just sign into your Google account, go to your drive, and your files will be there. And so that combined with the fact that you have unlimited storage, those are some of the primary benefits of Google Drive. So that's what it is. Everything is stored in Google Drive. If it's a doc, it's in Google Drive. If it's a sheet, it's in Google Drive. If it's a Google Slides presentation, it's in Google Drive. Google Site, it's in Google Drive. All of those files are stored in Google Drive. All right, so that takes care of step one of our agenda. Step two is accessing Google Drive. For just about all products in Google, there are multiple options. Okay, so one of the easiest ways for most people to navigate to all the Google products is through what we call the waffle or the Rubik's Cube. It's this one up here, right? So you just click on that and you'll see the Drive icon. So you could click on that and that'll take you to Google Drive. Another option is if you just opened a tab on your computer and you go to drive.google.com, that will take you to exactly the same location. Let's see, I've got my drive there. As with just about all Google apps, there are multiple ways to get to your drive. So you could also just open up a fresh browser tab and go to drive.google.com. And that'll take you to the exact same location. And I mention that because that's a similar pattern across all of the Google apps. If you wanted to get to a new doc, you could go to the waffle, or you could type in docs.google.com. If you wanted a new Google Slides presentation, you could go to the waffle, or you could type in slides.google.com. So that pattern is familiar across all the Google apps. So, okay, now I'm in my Google Drive. We've covered step two of the agenda, which is accessing Google Drive. Step three of the Google Drive talked about list versus grid view. Now, if you don't use Google Drive very much and you have an empty one like this, right, this isn't going to make too much of a difference. But if you did have a full Google Drive, and I'll show you an example just for... So if we look at this, this is a grid view. So if yours doesn't look like this, you might be in list view, which is just this icon right there. That's list view. If I click on that, it'll list all of my files and folders as a list, right? I prefer the grid view myself. So if yours looks different than mine, then you can just switch it over to grid view. If you don't like the grid view and you'd rather keep it in list view, that's completely up to you. I'm just mentioning it in case you're wondering why yours looks different than mine, if it does. One of them is list view and the other is grid view. I am in grid view because I prefer it. Okay, now that we've got that covered, the next step of the agenda, was keeping your Google Drive organized. So right now I'm looking at a brand new account, so there's nothing in it. And the most important thing you can do to make Google Drive work for you is to keep it organized. So if you have just a whole mess of files in your Google Drive, every time you want to create a new doc, you just go up here and you go to Google Docs. Anytime you want a new slide, you go up to the waffle and you click on Google Slides. After a while, you are going to have a drive that is just completely filled and cluttered with different files, and you're going to really have a hard time keeping track of things and finding them when you need them. So keeping your files organized in Google Drive is the most important thing that you can do when using Google Drive, because otherwise it becomes almost useless because you can't find the things that you need. So keeping your drive organized. If you go into your Google Drive right now and it is a giant mess of different files and you don't know what most of that stuff is, I would dedicate a little time towards cleaning that out and deleting stuff you don't need and organizing the things that you do need into sensible folders. Again, I'm going to drag over that other screen just to show you a little bit of an example, right? You've got all of these different rectangles here are different folders with various items related to them inside. So you could have a folder, and then you can have folders within folders, right? And you can have folders within those folders as well. So you can embed those folders, but I can't overestimate enough the importance of ensuring that you keep your drive organized, and you keep it organized by using folders. It is for that reason that I would say when you want to create a new Google Doc, for example, or perhaps you want to create a new Google Slides presentation, I actually recommend that you don't go to Google Slides or to Google Docs, right? So your instinct might say, okay, I want to create a new Google Slide, so I'm going to open a tab, go to the Rubik's Cube and click on Slides, and I'm going to click blank. And I'm going to start my new slides presentation. All right, I give it a name. That's a terrible name, but I just want it to appear at the top of my Google Drive. So when I go back to my Google Drive and I refresh the page, sure enough, there it is, right? That slide presentation that I just made. But over time, like I said, if you continue to do that, every time you want to create a new slides presentation, every time you want to create a new doc, create a new worksheet, collaborate with a colleague, if you continue to do that, this drive is going to fill up with random documents all over the place very quickly. So I suggest you do not actually go directly to slides or to sheets or to docs when you want to create new ones. Instead, go to Google Drive. That's why I said it's the foundation. It's the point where everything connects, because you can get to everything else from Google Drive, right? But you can keep things much more organized if you start in Google Drive. So if I wanted to create a new unit with some materials, some docs, some slides on, let's say, the 13 colonies, if this is what I was doing in my social studies class, I would go to my Google Drive and I would click New. And then I would create a folder. And let's say this was a 13 colonies unit. I would create my 13 colonies unit. Okay, and you can see I've got my folder named 13 colonies. So I would go inside my 13 colonies folder. And once I'm inside, right, when it's empty, this is what it'll look like. Once I'm inside of that folder, then I go to new, and let's say I was going to create a Google Doc. Immediately, the first thing you would do is you would give it a good title. So let's say this was chapter 1, checking for. Okay, and then you would create your document. if you get into this habit and you do it consistently, your drive will stay much more organized. It will be much more effective. You will be much more efficient in using it. So while it may seem like a little like the obvious thing to do would just do the fastest thing, go directly to Google Docs, go directly to Google Slides, I really encourage you to not do that. I suggest you use Drive as your starting point. And then if you're creating something that's going to require several documents, right? A theme, a unit, then create a folder for it, and then house everything inside of that folder. That way, whenever I know I'm going to find something on the 13 colonies unit, I know exactly where to find it. It will make your life much easier if you do it this way and not just go directly to the slides or to the docs apps. In fact, I might even say, you could create another folder that says, since this was a social studies example, I might create a folder named social studies units and put all of my individual units or chapters inside of that. So then if I ever wanted to find all of my units, I know immediately I would go to my social studies units. What chapter am I looking for? The 13 colonies, or which unit, the 13 colonies. And then I would have all of my different units right there, and all the documents that are associated with that unit would also be there. Okay. I get that you probably get my point and I'm harping on this, but it is of tremendous importance. And so I really, that's why I'm overemphasizing this, is I really want you to do it this way. And in fact, then once you have some folders that you use frequently, I'm going to skip ahead to one of my other agenda items, which was step 8 there, was color coding those folders. We'll get to that. I'll go ahead and just address that right now. So you'll see I've got some of my folders, the ones that I use most frequently. If you had a unit such as a social studies unit, and if you're a social studies teacher, this is probably a folder that you would use pretty often. So you can just right click in any of those folders that are ones that you refer to often, and go here to change color, and you can give that folder a color. Now we're talking about saving yourself a couple of seconds, but really as your folders build up, right, and you become much more of an efficient user, and you get to things really quickly, it is really nice to label your folders this way, because the ones that you use most frequently you can find quickly. Again, it's just a couple of seconds, but it's a nice little feature. I encourage you to do that with the folders that you use frequently. Okay, I think I've harped on that enough, so I'm going to move on to the next step. So we've covered step 4, which was keeping it organized. I want to mention Google Drive, or I'm sorry, shared drives inside of Google Drive. So shared drives that used to be called team drives, so maybe you've seen that before. It's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It is a Google Drive that is shared amongst other people in your organization. So it's over here on the left-hand side, and it's a collective drive, right? And the nice part about shared drives is there's no specific owner of them, because if I, for example, made this wonderful social studies unit, right? If I'm the social studies, one of the social studies teacher, and I created all these wonderful materials and I have them housed in my social studies unit, right? But if I then leave this organization and I take all of my files with me, I download them when I leave, and then I delete my folder, right? If I had just shared this with you, if I shared this with you, you are one of the other teachers in my team, and I shared my folder with you, but then I later left and I deleted this folder, that's gone, right? It disappears from your drive then as well. So the nice thing about the team drives is that there's no specific owner. It's owned by the organization. So as people kind of come and go, those resources are maintained. So it's really good for things that you want to stick around and share amongst a team, that you don't necessarily want to be tied to any specific individual. I'm not going to spend too much more time on share drives. I just want you to know what they are. They are here. You're probably all a part of at least one, which is the Harvey 152 Curriculum Resources Team Drive, or Shared Drive rather. And you may be part of others. Some have their own drives amongst their schools. Some have some among their grade level team. This is really good for collaborating, lesson planning, right? Keeping those documents in one location that can be accessed by everybody on your team. So they're really useful for that. So that is what shared drives are. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next part of our agenda here, which is moving files and folders. This is very important. So as your files add up and, as you continue to organize your files, especially from the starting point, if you're just going to start organizing your files now, you'll probably do a lot of moving of those files. So let's take this slide that we just created, and let's say I wanted to move that into this social studies unit. There's a few options. First, I can right click on it and click move to. Give it a moment to load. Once you click move to, then you're going to get a list of all of your different folders. So you're going to choose the folder that you want to move it to. So in this case, I want to move it to, I think it was social studies unit. So I'm going to click on social studies units. I could either move it just into the social studies units folder, or if I had other folders embedded in there, like I have this 13 colonies unit, then I can go inside of that and I could drop it into that specific folder that was embedded. And then I just click move here. So that's how I would move a file. Another option for moving a file is I could just literally click on that file and drag it into that same folder. And that accomplishes exactly the same thing. As you become more familiar, you'll realize that in certain circumstances, it's better to do one versus the other. So for example, if I wanted to go inside of a folder that was embedded, right? And let's say I wanted to move this back out to my drive where I just moved it from, right? Where am I going to drag it to? I could either just drag it up here into the social studies units folder. I could just drag it directly to my drive. Or once again, I could right click on it. I would click move to. And now this is a part I want you to pay attention to because it confuses some people. So right now I'm in my 13 colonies unit folder. If I want to move this back to my main drive, I got to back up. So I got to press this arrow, and that's going to back me up to the social studies units folder, and I could drop it right in there. But if I wanted to back all the way up to my drive, and let's say I actually meant to put that into, say, this content areas folder, right? Then I can then move it there. Oh, that wasn't the right one. That's just math and science. I'm looking for a different one. Back up. And this takes you back to your main drive. And then once again, you can go inside of a different folder. You can go inside of yet another folder and navigate that way. So again, you have multiple options. I just want you to be familiar of how you navigate within these because that creates confusion. If you're trying to move something and you're in the curricula folder, for example, then you would need to back up and get back to your drive in order to find, all right, now where did I actually want to put this file? As I alluded to a few moments ago, you could also just click on it and drag it right into one of these options up here. So let's say the social studies unit. So if I go back to my social studies unit, there's that slide. If I wanted to put it into my main drive, I could just click over, drag it right into main drive or my drive. And then when I scroll down, there it is back in my main drive. Okay, so that's a bit about moving files around. Whenever you have a file or a folder, you can always right click on it, move to, and navigate either backwards or forwards, right? See that backwards or forward, which is inside of a folder, to move a file that way. Alternatively, you can always click and drag both folders and files. So I could click and drag this entire folder and move it inside of another folder. I don't want to do that right now. Same thing with files. I could click on any file and drag it into any specific folder as well. So those are your options for moving files. Okay, next up on the agenda, we are on step 7 here, which is downloading files and folders. So I'm going to go back to my drive now. Downloading files. So all these documents are uploaded to the Google Drive, right? Which is cloud-based. So they're not actually physically on your computer. That's kind of that's one of the big sticking points when transitioning from kind of the older system where everything was stored on the computer itself, on the physical hard drive. And then we transitioned to, using a lot more flash drives, which are just smaller hard drives. So when you're transitioning everything into Google Drive, it's all up in the quote cloud. So in order to get, if you do need to have those files for some reason, right, you need to put it on a USB, or maybe you're going to be somewhere where you don't know if there's going to be an internet connection, because that is an important point, is that when you're trying to access Google Drive or any cloud-based application, is you need internet access. So if you were to go somewhere, you're giving a presentation and you thought, the internet's probably going to be a little spotty, I better download that, put it on a USB just so I have a backup, or one of many other various reasons you may have for downloading a product off of your Google Drive and onto an actual device, be that your computer or a USB flash drive, something like this. So like most things, if you're wondering, like, how did he do that a week from now, just right click on stuff and eventually you'll find what you're looking for. If you right click there and you don't see it, it's because I'm not clicking on anything. I'm clicking on some empty space. But if I click on a file, excuse me, if I click on an actual file, down at the bottom, you'll see the download button. So just click on that. Again, I right-clicked on the actual file to get this menu of options, and then right down there at the bottom, download. And you'll notice that when it downloads files from your Google Drive, it'll download them in Microsoft format. So that just downloaded that from a Google Slides presentation into a PowerPoint presentation down here when I actually downloaded it onto my computer. That same principle would apply if I clicked on a Google Doc, like this one, for example. If I right click on that and I then left click on that download button, that would download that as a Word file. I'm going to right click on this PDF and download it. And a PDF is a PDF. So that's still going to stay a PDF, right? But just be aware of that. It doesn't make much difference either way, but that is what it does. Now, it's worth mentioning, if you're wondering, these icons on the bottom left, and you'll get very familiar with them. They tell you what kind of file it is. So this doesn't actually say it, but it's a yellow square, and I know that those are slides presentations. This red one here actually does say PDF, if you can read that in the square. So I know that's a PDF. The blue with the lines on it is a Google Doc. This one over here is a red square with the little white stripes on it. That's a video file. So, I mean, as you become more familiar with these files, you'll be able to identify those easily. But in case you are wondering, that's how I'm able to tell what is what. Okay, now downloading folders. That's a little bit same process essentially, but an added step. So let's say I want to download a folder. I would just right click on the folder, but let's see, I'm gonna go inside. I don't want to download a huge one, otherwise it'll take too long. But let's say I want to download, okay, I've got some graphic organizers here and I want to download this whole folder. I'm just going to right click on that folder and again, download. Nothing new so far. Notice though, it's preparing the download, it's zipping up that file. So when you're downloading a folder, you're downloading several documents at the same time. Otherwise, you would just download the single document by itself. So downloading a folder implies that you're downloading several documents. And to download several documents within a folder, it needs to zip all those files up into a zipped or compressed file. And so you've probably seen them before, but I know sometimes they present a little confusion, so I just want to mention it. So when you download a folder, it will download it as a zipped file. Now, how you open a zip file is going to kind of depend on what device you're using. If you're using a Mac, then you just click on those and they unzip themselves, and that's it. If you're using a PC, which I am, there are a few different ways, but I tend to click Show in Folder, and then I would right-click on it and extract. So that folder is right now zipped up, it's compressed together, and I want to extract or expand it. So I'm going to click Extract. And then in just a second, I'll find I have this zipped file here called docs, graphic organizers, and then a random bunch of numbers. And then if I go down, oh boy, here we go, docs, graphic organizer. This is the unzipped file. So your zipped files tend to be higher up. But in any event, I just extracted it, and there is the unzipped file. And I can go inside of that, and there are all those graphic organizers that I just downloaded. If that all seemed like a bit much, don't worry about it. Honestly, you will very rarely ever need that. I just want you to know that the capability is there. So just because things are in your drive, you are able to download those files or full folders and put those onto a hard drive, a USB, or whatever you want that would make you feel better. I mention that because I know it's a sticking point for some people. They're really attached to their USBs and they don't want to give them up because they just feel better knowing that it's saved onto those devices. So it is an option if you wish to use it. It's there. Okay, next item of the agenda. We've talked about moving files and folders. We've talked about downloading them. In fact, we've talked about color coding them as well. Just a quick reminder, right click on the folder and add or change color rather. And that's it. Whenever you're uncertain, as I mentioned before, just right click on a file or folder and you'll see all the different options that are there. As long as I'm mentioning that, I don't think it's an agenda item, but if you wanted to delete a file, like this one is pretty useless to us, I could just remove it. And that means delete. I should mention though, that when you remove it, it goes to your trash can. So it's really just moving it to a different place. So it's still accessible. They say that it'll be accessible for 30 days after you trash it. In reality, I find files that I trashed much longer than 30 days ago in there sometimes. Best just to be careful. Don't remove stuff if you think you'll need it. You can move it into a folder, of stuff like miscellaneous things that you're not sure what to do with, because ultimately space isn't the concern. It's organization. So if you don't need it, get rid of it. But if you're uncertain, you could at least just create a folder of miscellaneous items and stick them in there. What you don't want is to just be afraid of deleting things. And so then you just let garbage compile in your drive and making it very cluttered and unorganized. There, have I harped on that enough now? Okay, so that's color coding files. Starred files and folders, not very, well, I shouldn't say that. I don't use it very often, but it's like favorites. So think of it like a bookmarks inside of your drive. So if this was, let's say we wanted to just right click on it, as I mentioned for most things, and you can click those to your add to starred. And that just means add to my favorite, my most frequently used files. I prefer the color coding myself just because I can see it instantly. I don't need to click anywhere else. I just, boom, it's right there. I can see the color coded folders. But let's say that I wanted to, these were some folders I wanted to kind of favorite. I wanted to put them in my bookmarks folder. So I just right click, and you could do that for folders and files. Right click on a file, star it. There we go, add to starred. And that's just adding it to your favorites. And then over here on the left, so if you wanted to look at all your favorites in one place, see there are all those documents that and folders that I starred are now in that one location. So again, it's just, maybe that works with your workflow, and you'll find that super useful. I can't say that I use it very often, so I'm going to go ahead and unstar or remove from starred because I don't want them there. That should be a good enough reason. There we go. Okay, so you could add things to star, you could remove things from the starred area. Okay, so that takes care of that agenda item. That wasn't bad. Converting documents to Google format. Okay, this is a bit of not a bit of, it's a quite unknown feature. And I like it because I work entirely in Google Apps now. So basically what this is you can, one thing I should make clear about Drive is that you can put any files in it. And I'm going to show you that when I show you how to upload files from your computer to your Drive and create links, I'll show you many different file formats. But essentially you could upload a Microsoft Word file or an Excel file or a PowerPoint file and keep it as a PowerPoint file even within Google Drive. That sounds a little strange. Why don't I just show you an example? Let's see. Somebody recently sent me oh, there's a PowerPoint. Okay, that's good. So this is that PowerPoint I actually downloaded. So I'm going to take this, and this will cover a few bases here. I'll show you how to upload a file to Google Drive. You have two choices. There's always more than one way of doing things. So I'm going to right click on an empty spot of my Google Drive. I'm going to right click and I'm going to click upload. This is just a file that I'm uploading. I'm going to click upload file. You could upload entire folders if you want. I'm going to click upload file. And I want you to pay attention to what happens when I do this. This is a PowerPoint presentation. I look at the file type right there. It is a Microsoft PowerPoint presentation. I'm not lying. When I click and drag that, give it a moment to upload here. Okay, it's all done. Look how it uploaded it. It uploaded it as a Google slide, right? I know that because, again, the yellow square. Right? So it was a PowerPoint, and then when I uploaded it, it automatically converted it to a Google slide. That is my preference. If you would like to upload files as a PowerPoint and then leave them as PowerPoint, even within your Google Drive, that's an option. I am pretty comfortable in advocating to just move the files into Google format because you can always change them back. But that's a choice that I made. So whenever I upload something that as a Word document, a PowerPoint, Excel, it's going to automatically convert to a Google file. So a slide, a doc, a sheet, etc. Anyways, this is all a long way of saying that's an option you can choose. Up here in the settings, you can go to the little gear, settings, and then you can choose to convert uploaded files to a Google format, or you could leave that unchecked and it will leave them in their other formats. So PowerPoint, Excel, Word, right? Whereas if I check that box, which I prefer, I would then upload, say, a PowerPoint doc, and it will automatically just change that to a Google slide, which is what I want. So that's a preference item, but I just want you to know that it is available to you. Okay, now that takes care of that, and we are finally at the last and main item, or at least one of the more important items, which is creating shareable links. So in addition to Google Drive being unlimited because we're a Google for Education account, right? Not your personal account. Is your personal accounts, if you have a personal Gmail account, that is not unlimited. That's, you get 15, I believe, still 15 free gigabytes, and then they want you to upgrade to a paid account. Your Google for Education, your school district account, is unlimited. So that's a pro. The fact that you can access it from anywhere, any computer, that's a pro. And then this whole collaborative opportunity that presents itself from being able to share documents and edit documents together or share links to documents, that whole aspect of Google Drive, or just all the Google apps in general, is a massive benefit to the Google app suite. So that's where we'll spend a few minutes here, is creating and sharing links in Google Drive. So I've been working in my district drive here where I have a lot of files, because it made more sense for me to demonstrate the features I was talking about by actually working with existing files and folders. So it made much more sense. But in creating and sharing links, I'm actually going to transition. I'm going to show you a fresh drive, just so you see one started from scratch without a lot of clutter in it. So you could just very clearly see how uploading these files works. So I've got a fresh drive here, right? And you can see it's a different account by my profile picture, which clearly looks just like me, the full head of hair. And I've got, let's look for some files that are on your computer. So again, this will be a demonstration of taking files off of your computer, off of your hard drive, off of your USB, uploading them to your Google Drive, which is cloud-based, then creating links out of those documents, which you can then share with others. So it's pretty straightforward to do. I've got a series of documents here that in different file formats that I want to use just to demonstrate that you can use many different file types. So I've got a Word document here, and you've got a few options for uploading it. I could either right click inside my Google Drive on any blank space, and I could upload a file. And then I could find that file. Let's see, it was here, and I was gonna choose this one. So you're familiar with this. This is like the same process of like adding an attachment to an email. And then I'm gonna click open. Right, and then that file is going to upload to Google Drive, and there it is. Notice something interesting here. Since I'm using a different account, the one that does not have that setting here to convert files, right? See how that's unchecked on this account versus the one that I was using previously, where it would convert those files automatically to, say, a Google Doc in this case. It maintained, see how it has that W on it, it kept it as a Word file. So just an interesting tidbit to notice there. Okay, so right click on any empty space, upload file, upload folder. That's option one. Option two would be to take a file. So let's take this PDF file, for example, and I'm going to take that PDF. Let's see. Here we go. Here's a printable worksheet from Study Island. So let's say you printed or you created a printable worksheet from Study Island and you want to add that to your drive. I'm just going to click on it and drag. Once you get that blue highlight, that's when you know it's ready to drop, right? And there it is. So exactly the same result, just a different way of doing it. Again, right click, I could upload a folder this time. And let's say I wanted to add this folder here. I would just click on the folder, upload. It may take you a bit longer. It says this will upload all files from module 3. Only do this if you trust it. Okay, these are files from my computer, so I know exactly what they are. That's just making sure you know what all those files are. And it will take a little bit longer because notice there are 36 files in that folder. But notice it uploads it then as a folder, one of those rectangle folders. So that's pretty nice. So if you have things organized on your computer hard drive, that will make life a bit easier because literally I'm demonstrating this one at a time, but you could literally just take all of these, right? Select all of the items in like say your documents or downloads and literally click and drag all of them at the same time. And this is one of the most wonderful things you can do. Even if you still want to keep your USB, right? Even if you don't want to let it go, why not make an extra copy of it and keep it in the cloud? So you could take literally your USB, select all the items on it, and just drag it right inside of your Google Drive. Now, once again, I wouldn't do that without organizing stuff into folders first, right? Or at least doing it immediately after you upload it. Don't upload a whole bunch of files so that your drive becomes a giant mess with just all this random stuff that you've been saving since 1997. Create those folders. All right, I want to demonstrate a couple others. Notice that folder is now fully uploaded. It took a few minutes longer because it was a larger file. Let's see, we've got an Excel file. So I could click on an Excel file and upload that. I could click on a video, that orange cone there, that's a video. So I could upload that. I've got an image, a JPG file, that's an image. I'm going to upload that. Right, and all of this is just to show you that any file type can be uploaded. Right, we've got Word documents. We've got PDFs. We've got Excel sheets. We've got, well, again, PDF. Where's my video? Oh, there we go. There's that video I uploaded. If you get something like this, it's because I just uploaded it. And so we're looking at a preview right now. So you would just want to give it a few moments to finish completely uploading and processing. Otherwise, if it was a really long one, that may take a little bit longer for that to happen. Okay, and then we had a JPG, we had an image file. Okay, so this is just to show you that any file format that you have, you can upload to Google Drive, and then you can create links to it. So let's take our Study Island PDF worksheet here and create a link from it. So I'm just going to right click on this file and click share. Right now, you are probably most familiar with immediately sharing this with another person, right? So you would just type in that person's email address, and then you select what sort of permissions you want them to have on that particular file. This is incredibly important because you can allow other people to collaborate with you by giving them the opportunity to edit a file, or if it was something that you merely wanted to share with them, but you didn't want them to edit. Say it was something like you have an original copy and you're looking for some feedback, but you don't want anybody to change it. Then if you're looking for feedback, you might just allow them permission to comment on a particular file. Or if you don't even want them to be able to comment, you can just give them permission to view a particular file. It is entirely up to you which permission you want to grant to people. When I'm doing things, when I'm working with files, I'm almost always going to give people permission to view a file. And this is why I get endless amounts of emails requesting access to documents. And if you have a file in view only, it's very possible that that was done by, it's possible that it was done by mistake. But more likely is that the person was saying, here is my copy of this document. Now, if you would like a copy to edit yourself, make your own copy. And you can do that very easily in Google Docs, and I'll show you that in just a few moments. But it's not necessary to request access to edit a file. You can just go to File, make a copy, and then make your own copy of that file that you could edit to your heart's content. Okay. So that is how you share files with an individual, and you're probably a little familiar with that. You may have done that before, but we're not talking about sharing files. We're talking about getting links to files, and to do that, you just click Get Shareable Link. Now, instantly that became green. It turned from gray to green, and now you have a link, right? Once again, you have to set the permissions. The default is that anybody within our domain, so inside of anybody with a Harvey 152 email address can view this file, right? But you can change those permissions. So let's say that you were this was something that you wanted to send home for e-learning. What if the parent is trying to access this particular file to print it out for their child, right? We don't necessarily want to restrict access to this within Harvey 152. So in those cases, you're going to click here and then go down here to More. And then you've got all these other options. So you could say that anybody with the link can now view this, or it's public on the web. Really, 90% of the time, you're going to use either everybody at Harvey 152 with the link can access it, and that's what you'll use. You'll leave it at that most of the time. But if you do specifically, if you're sending a link out to parents, something that you want somebody to access through the link, who does not have a Harvey 152 email address, then you would want to choose this one, anybody with the link. And that means that they don't have to have a Harvey 152 email address to access it. So you're just going to click on that and save. Right? Make sure you copy the link. And that's it. Now you've got the link. Now you, of course, need to put it somewhere. So let's say that I'm just going to create a doc, for example, to show you how to. Right, so there is the link, right? That is the link. If I were putting that into a template, say, for example, this would be the link that I would want to give. Person could just copy that link, put it in their browser, and they would take them directly to that Study Island printable worksheets where they could then print it, or at least refer to it and answer it using paper and pencil if that's what they needed to do. But that's the link then that you could give. Now, one tip that I want to share with people is that rather than using links that look like this, right? because they're big, they take up a lot of space, and they don't have any meaning to them, right? Is you could say, what kind of worksheet do we have here? We have addition and subtraction. What I would do if I were adding this to my template, my e-learning template, is I would write addition and subtraction worksheet. And then I would copy this link here and I would cut it. So either press Control or Command X, or I could just go to Edit and cut. So then I highlight this text and I could go to Insert Link. And I paste the link here and apply. Now my text is the link. So it actually has meaning, right? The words actually mean something rather than just a random string of letters and numbers. And it takes up less space. It's just much nicer to look at. So I say addition and subtraction worksheet. It's blue and underlined, so I know it's a link. I even can see a preview of it here. I click on it and there is that same exact link, right? So that is what I recommend for when you're creating links, especially if you want them to have some meaning for the person to understand what is this link that I'm about to click on. It makes much more sense to do it that way. Okay, so that is how you create a link for that document. And it is essentially, not essentially, it is the same no matter what the document is. Not just documents, folders as well. Maybe you have an entire folder that you want to share with somebody else, right? I'm going to right click on it, share, and I'm going to click Get Shareable Link. By default is anybody at Harvey 152 can view if they have this link. That's probably going to be perfectly fine for you almost all of the time. Once again, though, you have the ability to change those permission settings, and you could change that if it were a folder that you wanted to share with a parent, for example, right? Then you could share it with anybody with that link. Copy that link, and we're done. Keep in mind that, see, now you have that little person that appears on the folder there, and that tells you that this is a shared folder. It is a shared folder. So somebody could paste in that link and they would have access to all of the documents in that folder. So be sure that if you share a folder with somebody, that you are okay with them having access to all the documents inside of that folder, right? Even if you add something later on. So if you decide later on you want to add this document here to that folder, it's going to remind you, hey, if you move this file in there, whoever has access to this folder can now see this new file as well. So it's just going to cost you just something to be aware of, right? It's not like a one-time thing. When you share it with somebody, then they have access to whatever you put in there while it's shared. So that is worth mentioning. Of course, you could always go back into the share settings and change these so that, say, sharing is now off. And notice how that little person disappears from the folder. So this is no longer a shared folder. So just because you share something doesn't mean you can't unshare it. Just be aware that if you share a whole folder, then whatever is inside of that folder is also shared. Okay, just a couple of loose ends to tie up, and then we'll wrap this up. You may have this quick access at the top of your Google Drive. I'm just pointing this out because I personally find it a little annoying that it just takes up this space at the top of my drive. This just takes items that it thinks that you may want to use soon. So items that you use frequently or recently, it will add up there. You can turn that off if you go up here to settings and check this box down here that says quick access. By unchecking that box, your quick access will go away. And since your Google Drive is going to be very well organized, you don't really need that extra help because you know where everything is at already. And last thing I just want to mention is that search. Use search as your drive becomes more full and you use it more frequently, right? You may want to search for things occasionally just to find a quick file. So right now I've got, let's say I know I had a great video on the water cycle. I could type in water cycle and there's that video right on the water cycle. As your drive fills up and you need more advanced searches, you could look for specific files. You're saying, okay, I knew I had a video or a PDF and I knew that this was shared with me by, you could put who owned it, or you could give it a time frame, or you could say it has the words, it is something to do with atomic mass, right? I don't have any files in mind that have to do with atomic mass, so I'll say, maybe I should say Study Island, because I know I have a file like that. And there's that file, Study Island, that is of type PDF. So use the search functionality. It will help you. It will make life easier if you do lose track of where a file is at. But again, we're going to try to keep our drive as organized as possible. And I think that that wraps up this session on Google Drive. I think the biggest takeaway here is that you can put any file type, the biggest takeaways, plural, you can put any file type into your Google Drive. You can create shareable links that can then be sent out to people in your organization or outside of your organization once those files are uploaded into Google Drive. And the most important thing about being able to use Google Drive effectively and efficiently is to keep things organized. So make use of folders. Get used to establishing that workflow whereby you go into your Drive first to create files, right? You go in there, you create a folder, and then from inside of that folder is where you would create a new doc or slide so that you can help keep things organized. That's it for Google Drive. Give it a try. Let me know if you have any questions.